Contingency Log Number 71. Codename: Agent Ukulele. In the ever-expanding realm of fiction, no matter the genre, the rating, or the subject, there will always be a chance that there is a secret organization the world is not allowed to know about. For the most part, these organizations stay hidden due to their practices of illegal and morally bankrupt exploits. For example, think of Aperture Science from the Portal series. Or perhaps you'll be more familiar with the Umbrella Corporation. The underlying similarity between them being their inhuman experiments, ones that fulfill their own desires with no care for anyone who would suffer as a result. But there are a select few who, while they may also have to do some immoral acts for their work, this is done not so much for the lack of care for the victims of their actions, but because they believe the sacrifice is acceptable when compared to consequences should they not. And in truth, if they didn't do what they thought necessary, the world itself would fall to ruin. In this case, I am speaking of Secure, Contain, Protect, or the SCP Foundation. You've likely heard of them, or at the very least know of some of the SCPs of which they have tasked themselves with containing. Perhaps you're familiar with SCP-173, the statue, or maybe even SCP-096, the Shy Guy, entities who, if left unchecked, would lead to massive loss of lives, and so the SCP Foundation have stepped in to ensure they are contained. But simply imprisoning them is not where they stop, as the SCP Foundation will also study them, as they wish to gain a greater understanding of the SCPs under their watch. As such, the Foundation employs various doctors who will aid in studying and categorizing the SCPs, with some being more effective than others. But there are a few who stand out the most, one of them being the target for this contingency. Dr. Clef. Being positioned as the director of the Department of Training and Development, Dr. Clef has Level 4 clearance in the Foundation, one of the highest you can have without having to work directly under a member of the O5 Council. But this is not what makes Dr. Clef stand out. No, it goes deeper than that. Starting with the fact that Dr. Clef is not entirely human, not in the way you and I are, at least. You see, Dr. Clef is an ontokinetic being. In short, he can warp reality, capable of wielding the energies of the universe to change their fundamental rules. One example of his powers in effect would be through the effect he has of photography. I am not changing his head in order to hide his identity. Rather, any photos taken of the man will replace his head with that of a random animal. It is entirely possible that Dr. Clef could have been, or was considered, for the classification of SCP, but it's clear that his skills were far too great to have him locked away behind a cell, especially when taking into account the work Dr. Clef has done before joining the Foundation. In his younger years, while working under the Global Occult Coalition, an organization who would rather destroy anomalies than risk them escaping capture, and Clef would find himself working on the front lines as a mercenary. In his time there, he had racked up 99 kills on anomalous entities. Mind you, these kills could possibly be inaccurate, as there are only confirmed kills, meaning his final count could be much higher. Needless to say, he has far more experience with SCPs than your average researcher. However, his time working under the Global Occult Coalition came to an end when the organization tasked him with killing someone he could not slay. This was not because the target was too powerful or unkillable, but because of his relation to the target. For you see, the occult had tasked Dr. Clef to kill his own daughter, someone who had developed anomalous abilities. Refusing to do this, Dr. Clef would fake his death and turn his daughter to the SCP Foundation, hoping that she would be safer under their watch. She would later be given the designation of SCP-166. Having read her entry, I can definitely say that it is problematic. Countering Dr. Clef could prove tricky for a variety of reasons, his ability to warp reality being the most obvious. But as he is someone who has experience in exterminating anomalies, it shows that he is not only smart, but very resourceful. That said, he is not invincible, and he had risked injury when fighting these entities in the past, enough so that he would want to leave the front line so that he could avoid continued encounters. I believe that for a counter to work, it needs to happen not only fast but also when least expected. That said, the fact that he works for a foundation that specializes in anomalous entities, there isn't a doubt in my mind that they likely have a contingency against him as well. Which brings me to a decision I need to make, which is how active a role I wish to take when it comes to the Foundation. While their treatment in D-class personnel is not something I can say I support, the fact is that the SCP Foundation is fundamental in keeping humanity safe in more ways than you could possibly imagine. As such, I am preparing to make contact with the Foundation, possibly the O5 Council as well, as I wish to extend an alliance. You see, I do not expect Dr. Clef to be my last time dealing with this Foundation, and I would much like to have the tools necessary to counter any future contingencies of this kind. They have the knowledge, and I have both the funding and the manpower that they could certainly use in their efforts. A mutual agreement to protect the planet from the things that no normal human can handle. That is the goal. Because should the worst come to pass, and a certain scarlet entity ever show itself, it's going to take everything we've got. And then some. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.